well, I'm working in a shop and there's mainly boys who come and buy it.
Okay, yeah, right. We'll carry on, Dr. Martin.
Okay. The second thing that we found was that for the group of girls who liked heavy metal as a whole, this 20% that we're talking about, and for a subgroup of the boys, there were very, very significantly high levels of a whole range of factors. So depression as measured on a depression subscale, suicidal ideation, that is thinking about your own death by suicide, having actually had a previous attempt at suicide, an increase in tobacco use, marijuana use, alcohol use, other drugs. And there were also some family factors. This whole sort of set of factors all seemed to cluster with this group and not with those who were listening to the pop music. Now, so that looked as though there was the beginnings of some kind of association. So the next thing that I have to say is we asked the kids whether they felt happier or sadder as a result of listening to the music. Now, what was interesting was that about 60% of them said they felt happier. And that fitted very much...
purging of all this aggression and
quite possibly,
dark thoughts and so on.
Quite possibly. Getting rid of something. But they felt happier, they felt better. And that fitted very much with looking at the pop music preferers who also felt happier in about that kind of percentage. However, there was a small group of about 11%. And when we looked at that 11% of young people, they all of those were severely depressed on the standards according to the depression subscale. Half of them had actually attempted suicide before, and all of the other factors were significantly different from the rest of the group. So if we put that together with some of our other studies, it looks to us as though there is a grouping of these kinds of indicators in every single school that you go into. Every single study that we've done over a sort of 15 or so studies now suggests that there's this group there. It looks like that group, as it were, seek out the music, seek out people who are similar to themselves or where the messages resonate with their internal world. The sort of thing that Michael was talking about earlier. And it makes them feel better because it's actually echoing their inner feelings.
Yes, I'm just trying to make sense of all this then. It would seem that it's associated with a whole range of adolescent problems.
Oh, yes.
And that many of the kids who are drawn to this are kids who have all these problems anyway, and those problems, in 11% of the cases you looked at anyway, are likely to be fed by the exposure to this music and exaggerate them all in their minds, and perhaps, not inconceivably, lead to severe depression, despair, even suicide attempt. How do the rest of you react? Well, Dennis, Twilight, you obviously...
Peter, I just have to say, in fairness to all the hard rock fans everywhere, that there is no evidence anywhere of a link between hard rock, heavy metal, and any sort of criminal or untoward behaviour whatsoever. You know, heavy metal fans, for as long as it's been going, have had to put up with well-meaning people who want to push whatever it is they're pushing and say that, look, it does all these terrible things to you. It doesn't. The people who have committed suicide, who have done whatever it is, were disturbed in the first place. The music had nothing to do with that. And I'm really personally sick and tired of having to put up with people like this getting stuck into the music that I like and all these other people here like.
Now, look, I don't think anyone's trying to argue that the music was solely responsible.
Give this argument any credence to say there's even the vaguest causal link is a word we can't say on national television, but that's what it is.
It wouldn't matter if you took away the music. These disturbed people would find something else.
Exactly.
There would just be something else. You know, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what the good doctor was saying earlier about the about the drawing of all the sort of the drugs and the alcohol and whatever to there. If you want to like talking about looking at drugs in different scenes, I mean, it's in the nightclubs, not the metal crowd. That's right. Like the nightclubs are the ones who are dealing all the ecstasy and the trips and all that sort of stuff. So, and also with the violence too. I mean, it's always in the news. The fights and the shootings and the stabbings and rapings are always at nightclubs. Metal gigs are really placid. Fair enough, everyone, you know, jumps around and has a good time or whatever, but it's calm. Everyone's there for a good time. They're friends.
It's never any fights.
Well, Yanina Cohen, you're concerned about this, aren't you?
Well, what concerns me is the lyrics, the messages of the lyrics of the music. It's not even so much the actual thumping, the sound of the music, but as I said, the lyrics and what these groups are putting out. That's what I find disconcerting, particularly toward young teenagers that are listening to this. And I mean, they're at an age, particularly young boys like 13, 14, right? They're trying to find themselves. They're really quite influenced by this music. As I said, it's not so much the actual sound of the music, but the messages that these lyrics that they're putting out. That's what I find sort of somewhat unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah, so it's the messages in the lyrics rather than the specific lyrics themselves that concern you.
Messages. And I mean, you know, if you were to cut it out and say, well, listen, you can't listen to that, well, you know, they'll go to a friend's place and listen to it at a friend's place. So, you know, you can't sort of win, you can't sort of ban it and say, well, listen, I don't think you should listen to that, because there seems to be a drawing with this music, not so much the music, well, music and lyrics, but seems to be drawing younger teenagers to this sort of thing. And I just sort of wonder what type of effect perhaps it does have. I mean, okay, you can sort of say, well, it's not going to affect everybody, and yes, they're not all going to go out and commit suicide, but as the doctor said, you know, there are cases where it does.
I suppose what concerns you and other parents like you is the preoccupation with death and suicide and all these dark themes by so many young...
Yeah, and it's the same theme. It's all the same thing over and over again. It's this preoccupation with this sort of negativity.
Well, what about some of the lyrics of some of the pop artists? Let's get away from the death metal. Take Billy Joel, song Captain Jack. It's about cocaine. Tony Childs, House of Hope. That's the song off that, I Think I've Got to Go Now. That's the one where, you know, the old man beats up on the wife and she hasn't got the guts to leave. That's negativity. What about Tracy Chapman Inciting a Revolution? Negativity. So there you go. There's a few of them as well. And that's pop music. That's pop music stuff that Mum and Dad listen to.
Millions of more people listen
And you can understand.
Nicole?
The way I see it, music is music, right? Now, I particularly don't like deaf, fresh, whatever you call it. I have my own band. We play funk music. My job in that band is to entertain my audience. People's job here in their bands is to entertain their audience, not to persuade someone to make suicide. Now, this gentleman over there said that that's not music, that's noise. It's music. They've had their drumming lessons, they've had their guitar lessons. They know how to play an instrument. If they prefer it to play it that way, fine. People have got to appreciate that. It's their type of music, and I have my type of music, I sing it, and people appreciate that.
You said up the back there, I think so. Well, do you want to make your point first, and then I'll...
Oh, well, just quickly, I would suggest that as much as if you put a lab rat strapped down in front of some death metal for 48 hours, it probably will kill itself. If you put any of us strapped down in front of a chair in front of Macbeth for 48 hours, or some of Shakespeare's wackier works, you'd get a similar response. You know, it's the problem's there. It's not necessarily death metal that'll put it off. Shakespeare would do the job just as well.
Well, somebody up the back there said a moment ago, so what do you want us to do about this? Perhaps one of the things we need to try and do is to understand why young kids, 15, 14-year-olds, who've got their whole life in front of them, who should be filled with the joy of the world, are attracted to such black themes. So preoccupied, some of them, with death and suicide and violence and anarchy and so on.
Well, those are the kids that are coming up in a society where there is so much unemployment, there is so much blackness in the world. Those are the kids that are going to be drawn to that sort of stuff because that'll be their only release. Like, there's nothing much a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid can do these days without getting into trouble for something. So, of course, one way of releasing themselves is sitting in their room listening to this sort of music, listening to any sort of music.
Can I ask everyone, did anyone feel violent or aggressive while we were playing? Did anyone feel like getting up and killing someone, or... I'll tell you what. Oh, that wasn't our fault. But there's more aggression at the footy than at a gig. Yeah. Especially the Richmond footy fans, you know.
Toby Creswell, why do you think kids, young kids in particular, are being so drawn to these deep and macabre themes?
Well, the thing with, I mean, heavy metal, without like wanting to get into too gross a generalisation, heavy metal has always been more of a working class thing than anything else, and like proper real hardcore heavy metal rather than the soft metal that's on the charts at the moment. It comes from what this guy over here was saying. It's very much an era of unemployment, it's an era of kind of alienation and a lack of hope, I think, that really has spurred this music on at the moment. But also that thing of wanting to push it a bit further, wanting to have like a real sort of cartoon sort of response to things rather than to sort of sit down and go into a kind of subtle analysis and do a sort of Bob Dylan number on the whole thing.
Is that right, those of you who listen to it? Is it a result of the sort of alienation you feel, being locked out of the system?
Why is it
Yes?
that?
Well, it's identification, I think. Like Triple R, the reason that we play it on the station is that it simply doesn't get played elsewhere, and that predominantly what commercial radio finds out is that aside from mainly boys between about the age of 15 and 22, no one else likes it. So it's like joining an exclusive club. But when you go into a heavy metal shop, or indeed you look at a heavy metal audience, you've got to remember too, it's a capitalist society that we live in. Now that music is one part of the marketing, but overwhelmingly the number of T-shirts, the paraphernalia, the caps, the badges, all that kind of stuff. There's no other music form that in a way music is such a minor part of, that it's actually a tribe that young males all around the world join. And what it means is that a kid in Ringwood might have more in common with a heavy metal fan in Utah than they do to their next door neighbour. It's a sense of belonging, but essentially to an exclusive tribe, because most people don't like two forms of music, and that's why we play it on our radio station. Heavy metal and real rap. And
Yeah, I know, but you still haven't explained to me why they're attracted to it.
Identification with the tribe. It's joining something. It's joining something that spans the world. It's an international tribe. We're having a band here from Brazil soon.
I mean, is it because it's a cult and it's shocking to so many middle-aged people?
Yeah, it's exclusive.
Antisocial?